So I would say werewolf and vampire movies are two subgenres of horror that I'm just not all that familiar with. I don't have a lot of experience in watching them. Personally, I have seen the big three: Universal, Wolfman, Drankenstein, Dracula, and Frankenstein. And personally, I would say Dracula is my least favorite, and the Wolfman was probably my favorite. But anyway, I've only seen two werewolf movies prior to this. I've seen the original Wolfman and a Hammer film from like the 60s called like Curse of the Werewolf. And so I was like, all right, everybody hypes this movie up. It's on my 100 must see horror films. I know of The Howling, I know of Dog Soldiers, and of course, I know about American Werewolf in London. And it's definitely critically acclaimed. It's a benchmark when it comes to 80s horror comedy and just the werewolf horror subgenre in general. And I was like, all right, I gotta give it a watch. We'll see how it goes. And holy shit, it exceeded my expectations, right? I was expecting a good horror movie with a subgenre, whatever, that I'm not a real big fan of, right? I mean, I haven't watched a ton of werewolf movies, but one of the reasons why I haven't watched a ton of werewolf movies is because generally they don't really pique my interest, right? But with this movie is an exception, all right? I absolutely loved this movie. It was amazing, and in pretty much all facets, right? You know, we start with the characters. Our lead character, David, he's a likable, fun, and kind of unfortunate, selfless character. You know, he's burdened with having his best friend attacked in northern England by a werewolf, and you know, he starts going kind of crazy. He falls for this nurse who's caring for him after getting attacked, and there's these constant battles throughout the movie of, you know, whether or not he's going insane and if he should kill himself or what he should do, and you know, battling with, am I really going to become a werewolf? And like, when I become a werewolf, did I kill these people? Should I kill myself? You know, I'm also in love with this girl. There's a lot of conflict going on with David as a character. And, you know, in my opinion, when it comes to protagonists in horror films, I think he is about as good as it gets. And, you know, you also have the nurse. I don't remember her name. Is it Sally? Jackie? No, not Nurse Jackie. I think it's Sally, who inevitably falls in love with David. Kind of a cliche. She's fine, you know. God, it seems like in every horror movie from like the 70s and 80s and 90s, the like female lead is like almost always kind of not shallow, but not all that interesting. However, I will say she is genuinely just a girl who's madly in love with this guy for whatever reason, even though he's fucking crazy from the jump. But she lets a pretty good performance. But one thing I did like that was a little bit different about this movie from, you know, some of the other werewolf tropes is that our boy David keeps having these hallucinations, right, where he sees his friend Jack, who is dead. And obviously, they are hallucinations. You see Jack throughout the movie. Early on, he's like his mangled corpse. Then throughout the movie, he becomes like more and more decomposed, I guess. And like by the end, it's kind of comical because he's just like a fucking skeleton in like that movie theater or whatever. But I don't know. I thought that was kind of a cool little part of the movie throughout, where you'd kind of see. It's like showing the inner battles of David's mind and kind of giving us a little bit of an insight into what the hell is going on. And like, you know, it's kind of I don't know if it's comic relief, but I particularly did like the scene where they're in the movie theater and the chick on the screen is super hot, by the way. But all of the victims who he had killed prior are like talking, and they're like, I was a father, I have kids, my wife's going to be a widow, and my children are going to be fatherless. And like it cuts to like the three dudes, Jack, who's like kind of snarky the whole time. He's like, you got me killed, you prick, and so I'm going to make you fucking feel bad because you're a werewolf and you're killing all these people. These are the 3 homeless fucking dudes that you murdered inside the junkyard or whatever. But yeah, I think that part really separates it personally from some of the other werewolf movies, or just like the popular werewolf tropes, you know? Because I know a lot of people are like, all right, transformation scene, right? That's the big thing. Like, okay, a werewolf movie can be made or broken whether or not it has a good transformation sequence or not. And I will say the initial werewolf transformation scene, whenever there is the full moon and there's playing Bad Moon on the Rise by CCR, and then it cuts into this weird like Bad Moon song or something, like it's way more upbeat, and then it starts. I will say, whenever his head starts to like stretch, I thought it was kind of funny, but his legs and his arms, like that shit was fucking, oh my god, that shit was gross. Like that shit was fucking nasty. And you know, I will say, the way he transforms into like the Wolfman, he looks nothing like his like final stage where he's running around killing people. But I mean, it's fine. That's kind of a nitpick. Personally, I thought the transformation sequence, you see it twice. You see it once kind of towards the middle of the movie, and then again at the very end. I think it was pretty good. I thought for 1981, with the practical effects, I thought the gore as well in this movie was pretty solid. There's not a lot of action when it comes to, well, let me hold myself there. There's not a lot of blood and guts splattering like in the moment. It's a lot of like, you see the werewolf jump out and like bite, and then you kind of see not the aftermath, but like you're not seeing him bite and blood gush. You're seeing him like, you see a shot and there's a little bit of darkness. So it's not super illuminated, but you see him bite, and then there's cuts to the next frame where there's blood gushing everywhere. You know, it's not quite as hands-on or something. I don't know. It's not quite Kevin Bacon stabbing the knife through the neck, or like, you know, you don't see it completely clearly, and that's fine. That's not an issue. I feel like otherwise, for how old this movie is, it probably could have dated. I think the special effects, the gore effects look fine, especially on Jack whenever he comes to life, like kind of towards the middle of the movie where he's got like just like badly like just his like wolf flesh wounds everywhere. I think that looks awesome. I do, and towards, because he comes in different stages, right? And at one point he reminds me of Bub from Day of the Dead. But no, I would say this movie was a solid werewolf movie, and it was a good time. And then the ending, right around the time he kills the guy in the subway, I would say, because that's a nice tense little kind of point of view sequence there. And then, you know, he wakes up in the zoo, which is fucking weird. He's butt ass naked. I particularly like the scene where he's trying to get arrested. And, you know, I do feel for Jack. He is a good, not Jack, David. He is a good person, right? He is a good character. He is a respectable anti-hero, protagonist / antagonist. I mean, he's battling with himself, right? Because, I mean, he's like legitimately trying to get arrested because he knows he's going to kill all these fucking people, right? And he just says some shit I can't say in 2021, but calls out like Prince Charles and the Queen Elizabeth, calling her a whore, and starts spewing cuss words right in front of the fucking police. It's funny, dude. It legitimately made me laugh, and I was like, there is some comedy here, but I would not consider this a horror comedy. I don't think. It's definitely a horror movie with a little bit of comedy elements, but there's not nearly enough amusing comedy for me to even consider it like even partly like horror comedy. Because like, let's say like, you know, Leprechaun's like 80% comedy, like 20% horror maybe, or maybe like 70-30. This is like 90% horror, 10% comedy, and I just don't think, you know, I think it's rendered as a horror comedy, but I don't know. And maybe the sequences with, you know, David talking to Jack are a little kind of quirky and not completely to be taken serious, but I don't know. I thought they were entertaining, but no, the ending of this movie is fucking awesome. When they're in like the Piccadilly Square or whatever, and he's watching like the porno movie, and then he starts attacking the police officer, and like, dude, that is just all out fucking chaos. It reminds me, the ending of 28 Days Later is what makes that movie so great, where it just goes fucking bananas, where he like shoots the chain and lets the the zombie that was on the leash loose and it just wreaks havoc. Like that, it gave me those vibes. Maybe it's because it's another British horror movie. I don't know. But whenever he's loose in Piccadilly Square, shout out to that map in Call of Duty, it fucking sucks. And he just starts going, like, he's not even killing everybody, right? He like bites a couple people, but then there's like car crashes and there's like gunshots from like the police officers trying to shoot him, and then there's like a bus crash and like people are running each other over, and there's like fucking pandemonium, people crashing into buildings and like storefronts. Like, it is legitimate fucking madness, and I love it. I loved it. It was awesome. It was so intense and it was so awesome. And you know, the ending, it was very abrupt. You know, I was interested to see, with every horror movie I watch, especially ones that are successful, I'm always like, okay, is there going to be a cliffhanger, or is there going to be an open-ended ending where you're like, maybe they'll make a sequel? No. They fucking shoot him. The nurse starts, you know, crying or whatever, because obviously another werewolf trope is whenever the werewolf is killed, it's revealed to be the person with whom like the soul was inside the werewolf. So like it's David's dead body, right? And she starts crying, and then it just immediately cuts to credits. It gets straight to the point. It was great. I love this movie. I really, really loved this movie. It was, when it comes to, I haven't seen like any Frankenstein or like really mummy movies, but certainly vampire and werewolf movies, not that I've seen that many, it's by far my favorite. And it kind of gets me wanting to watch The Howling, because I don't know if they're like rivals, you know what I mean? But like, those are like the two quintessential 80s werewolf movies, and honestly just werewolf movies in general. Like, those are two of the most prolific. But I thought, you know, from top to bottom, like I said, I love the beginning of the movie where it kind of sets the mood, and you got like the fog and like the real nice shots of like the real rural northern England vibes with the pub and stuff like that. And you're like, okay, what the fuck's going on? You got the pentagram on the wall, then you got the sequence where he just gets ripped to fucking shreds. Jack does. And then, you know, as it kind of progresses, you see him start to have these dreams, and he's going fucking nuts, and you're just like, holy shit. Like, this character with whom, you know, similar to the original Wolfman, you're kind of at a war of like, I really fucking feel bad for this guy, because, you know, he's a genuine character, he's a nice guy, but, you know, he's just cursed with this, you know, he's a werewolf, right? And at the full moon, he strikes and goes crazy and just goes ballistic and goes on a killing spree. But I mean, there weren't really any issues that I had with this movie. I'm trying to think of some nitpicks. I guess maybe at the end, and this is, you know, it's a plot. It's just a plot contrivance. I mean, she like, there's got to be like at least 100 people. Half of them are cops, and they're cornering him in that alley with the dumpster, and he's just kind of sitting there, right? The werewolf. And she's just able to like run up there by herself, and nobody tries to stop her, and nobody like does anything. And she like sits there and talks to him for like 20 seconds. And as she says, I love you, you know, 100 feet from behind, they got these guns, and then boom, 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 they shoot him. Like, what? Like that doesn't really make sense. But, you know, come on. There is no such thing as a perfect movie, right? And even still, I don't know. But for a 90-minute long 80s werewolf movie, this checks pretty much every box. I can't really think of many ways it could get better, and I don't really know of any reasons why it's not as great as I think it is. I would recommend this to horror movie fans. I would recommend this to movie fans for sure. I would even watch this with friends, family, whoever. I actually started watching it a couple nights ago. I watched like the first half hour with my aunt, and she was like, yeah, I remember watching this when I was younger. It was pretty good. I think you might like it. Which is shocking, because whenever we watch horror movies together, she's like, these are fucking stupid. She thought Black Christmas was one of the dumbest and worst movies ever made. But yeah, no, I'm feeling a 5 out of 5. There's no issues with it. It's great. I would happily watch it again. It is probably one of my favorite movies. Like, it's probably one of my favorite movies I've watched. And it's not even like a bona fide classic, you know? Because like movies like Hereditary or like The Exorcist or Jaws, those are all like 5 out of 5s, right? But those are like some of the greatest movies ever made. You know, everybody hypes those up as like 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, 4 out of 4 from Roger Ebert. Like, everybody is aware that those are like some of the best horror movies ever made. But this, it's not like it's some underground, Alice, Sweet Alice, but, it's not a bona fide classic up in the ranks with those movies. Although, I don't think it's too far off, but it certainly should be. I think this movie was amazing. It was great. I really enjoyed it. Highly, highly, highly recommend it. I think there's a sequel where it's like your sister is a werewolf or some bullshit like that. I'm not going to watch that. I don't even know if I'm going to watch The Devil's Reject. It is on my list, but I hated House of a Thousand. I did not like House of a Thousand Corpses. But anyway, yeah. American Werewolf in London. It's an 80s werewolf classic. 5 out of 5. Fucking amazing movie.